Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. My name is Angela Hollowell and I am the host of the Honey and Hustle podcast. In this video, I want to share some of my reflections on some of the challenges that I've had in producing a video podcast. I think there are a lot of people who are interested in adding a video element to their show, or who are just interested in starting a podcast and are wondering if they should start an audio and a video version of their podcast at the same time. These 5 things are not to discourage you, but to make you aware of the honest truth about the challenges of creating a video podcast. Number 1, short clips, they don't have any indication on how fast your show is going to grow. That is just first and foremost. I think for a while, a lot of people were caught in the craze of creating a video podcast because they have the greatest potential for repurposing, and repurposing is not this golden ticket for success by any stretch of the imagination. In any repurposing, whether it's for a blog or for a short form video, you have to be mindful and intentional about promoting your show where your audience hangs out online, or building a community of people who really are going to engage with what you're putting out into the world to promote your podcast. And yeah, that's not probably fun to hear when TikTok could be here and gone tomorrow, any day now. A lot of people, I think that's why they quit early on, because it is a big lift, no matter how many AI short form repurposing video tools they make. And it's not always a big lift that gets a reward that you may be hoping, which is more views and more download. The second one, and this is for my ladies, if you know why I'm wearing this beanie, this one is definitely for you. And it's that people have to worry about how they look on video. And for a lot of people, it can be discouraging to maybe have to think about, oh, I have to show up on camera a certain way. I can only do videos when I'm looking good. And it can be discouraging to have to think about that. And to realize that if you're just doing an audio only podcast, you can be in your closet with no pants on and having a great time, and it's going to sound amazing, and nobody's going to be any wiser about how you look. But with video, it's like this extra layer of preparation when it comes to doing a video podcast, and that's in person and remote, because people are going to have to see your face. So yeah. The third one is going to probably speak to price, and this is probably a lot of what cancels people out of starting a video podcast, which is the amount of equipment that it requires to get started, especially if you're doing an in-person. The cameras, the mics, the lav mics, the lights. It can be a lot, one, just to have and to buy, but it's also harder to travel with. And if you're a solo producer of a podcast, which I was for a very long time, it can be time consuming to get all that set up, to travel with it, and to break it, and to set it up, and to break it all down. It can be really cumbersome, very expensive. And again, a video podcast, just like any podcast, is going to be slow to start. Long-form content takes a lot longer to build an audience for. And so if you're putting in a lot of money on the front end and not necessarily seeing the rewards on the back end, that can be discouraging. Ask me how I know. So if you're not already a YouTuber or in the podcast space and you don't have a dedicated studio space to record in, now you're also talking about how are you going to pay for a space or find a free space to film in. For Honey and Hustle, we started with co-working spaces because that's what we could afford at the time, and that's what was accessible to us. I just moved into a private kind of office space to film in, and I'm 4 years in the game at this point. So yeah, it can be expensive to film in person. If you're doing it remote, then completely ignore what I'm saying. If you're on Riverside in your apartment or your home, then you're great, you're golden. But even then, you still have to worry about how your background looks and how all of that builds into the brand of whatever you're recording. So yeah, there's layers to it. So I think investing in a space can be cost prohibitive, time prohibitive, and just straight up not fun for people who don't enjoy decorating things. So something to think about. Last but not least, and this is definitely for the YouTube folks, YouTube views are public in a way that podcast downloads are not. So if you're hosting an audio only podcast, truly the only person who knows how good or bad it's doing is you. And of course, good and bad are subjective, but nobody can see your download numbers unless you share them. And I think that's why people are encouraging some of these bigger shows to share realistic views of what their downloads are per month or per episode. But the reality is most people, unless you're starting out with that type of budget, you're not going to hit that out of the gate. And when you're on YouTube, everybody can see if a video flopped. And most of them are not probably going to do well because you're still learning how to package things early on and get SEO going. So it can be hard to put something out there and to know, one, that you feel like it didn't perform well, and to know that everybody else can see that maybe it didn't perform that well. And I think for people on YouTube, and I can definitely say this has impacted my journey with YouTube, having that view count, like feeling you're putting so much effort into making a video amazing and great and look good and have really good sound mixing and royalty-free music, like all the effort you put into a video for it to get like 10 views, like that sucks. It's disheartening. Nobody wants that. And maybe for those first couple of episodes, maybe you're doing a B2B podcast and you already have a YouTube audience built in, great. But if you're a solo podcaster, even if you have a B2B podcast, you're a solo podcaster, B2B podcaster, it's going to take time. And I think, again, it's just a long game, and people can get really discouraged by playing the long game. And I could go on and on about video formats and finding the right video format for your show and finding an audience for your show and being consistent. But ultimately, those are probably my top 5. So if you're thinking about starting a video podcast or adding a video version of your audio only podcast, I'd love to hear from you. What have been some of your deterrents to starting a video podcast and adding video to the work that you're already doing? If you have started one and you stopped, tell me which of these was the straw that broke the camel's back. And, you know, if you love to have more of these conversations, I'd love to keep having them. I'd love to keep sharing my perspective on video podcasting and filmmaking and running a creative business around both of those creative passions. Let me know. So if you got value from this video, please subscribe to the channel because I want to see you in the next video.